So, so welcome everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming in. Uh, Gaurav, can you just ensure that you can see my screen? And
Yes, I can.
yeah, okay. So as we have announced in the agenda that today in India Mentor, so you can see that this is our site, indiamentor.com. Just quickly, two words on India Mentor. So India Mentor is a site, where you will find people who are seniors, who have done exceptions in their field and they mentor people. So for example, you will find me, at least from .NET side, you will find Sukesh sir, you will find, some other a lot of good people out there who actually do mentoring, right? So I do come on this site and I do regular mentoring. So in case if you are want to find some mentor who is around your capability, you can try to connect with Gaurav, or you can try to connect with Shubhi. Okay, but today my goal here is to talk about design patterns. And what I've done is, today I've taken an exception. Normally, whenever you have whatever design patterns lectures you must have heard, or whatever notes you must have heard online, uh, they start with, what is design pattern? They start with factory pattern. They start with some mundane code, right? So what I've done today, I have taken out those design patterns which I found that in my 15 years of career, I've been using them regularly. Means I start a project and I cannot complete that project without that design pattern coming in, right? So what I did is I picked up, such 5 design patterns. I put them around here, and we'll talk about it. At this moment, as usual, I have not come planned, so I don't have any PowerPoint presentation or anything. But what I will do is, whatever I discuss in this class, whatever code I show in this class, I will be distributing that code. And in this class, whatever I speak, I will write down small notes in this Word document, and these notes I will publish then on indiamentor.com. Okay, so just I know that a lot of people know about design patterns. So I will just say the definition of design pattern, which is very famous definition around. That design pattern is nothing but it is a time-tested solution. So in other words, for example, if you say that okay, there are two classes and those two classes are tightly coupled with each other, then probably you can use a factory pattern. If you say that okay, there is a third-party component and that component is not getting integrated in your project due to some interface issues, must be you can use adapter pattern. You say that okay, in your project you want a, a single instance of a cache, then probably you'll use a singleton pattern. So basically this design pattern is time tested solution for architecture purpose. It is not a general thing. Means it does not help you in WPF or MVC. It does not help you in solving logical problem, but architectural issues around classes and objects is what design pattern actually talks about, right? Now, so this is the definition of design pattern, what is there around, right? Now, design pattern, everybody in his, in his life of his coding, he must have used some design pattern every now and then in his project. Every day he must be seeing some design pattern, but he does not know the name of it. So a lot of developers think that, design patterns can only be done by seniors, only if you are experienced of 5-10 years, and once you gather all the wisdom of IT, then only you can do design pattern. I think no. Design pattern should start right from a person who starts with his first project, right? So in this class, when I run through these 5 design patterns, I'm very sure that you will say that, okay, this pattern I have already been using it. So must be for some people, this class can be like, okay, this design pattern I did not knew, but for some people, this can be like, okay, I knew this design pattern, but today I know the name of this design pattern. Okay, so you'll find that this class is a bit absurd than the class what you have attended till today. So now there are some couple of points which I want to make around design patterns. One of the myth of design pattern is that design pattern has come only from gang of 4 people. So there is a gang of 4 design patterns which is around. So a lot of people think that that gang of 4 design patterns are the only 24 or 30 design patterns which are existing in the market, or people have accepted it. On the contrary, I will tell you that a lot of those gang of 4 design patterns nowadays are outdated. So nowadays a lot of new design patterns have come in, like repository pattern I've seen, and then we have unit of work, then we have some other design patterns which have emerged out, like CQRS and so on, right? So remember that some design patterns have come from gang of 4, then some design patterns have come from DDD, that is Evans, and then some design patterns have come from a lot of places. So do not think that design patterns means gang of 4 patterns. Gang of 4 patterns, if you see Gang of 4 patterns, they have come in C++ times. So today, if you see like with all this .NET Core and Angular coming in, we need new, what do you call, new design patterns, which can match these technologies, right? So the design patterns, what you see in Gang of 4 is one part of it, but then there are other design patterns which have emerged, and we should equally respect them. Also, one of the other things which a lot of developers get confused is they get confused about three terminologies: design patterns, and then we have architecture pattern, and then we have architecture style. Three terminologies again I want to clear off here. Like MVC is architecture is architecture pattern. I'm sorry, I have a mild cough today. MVC is architecture pattern. MVVM is architecture pattern. Factory is a design pattern. Singleton is a design pattern. REST is an architecture style. Service oriented is an architecture style. So we have to be very careful when we use these three words. Okay, so let me just put down some light on these three words, what exactly they mean. In design pattern, you know the pseudo code, or somewhat how the source code can come up. For example, if somebody says singleton pattern, then in singleton pattern, yes, you will have a static keyword, you will have a private constructor, you will have lazy loading. So some code can be put around, and this code can be common for Java and C# or any object-oriented programming language which exists. The code will come somewhat nearby. Okay, so when you say that something is a design pattern, you know the source code of it, some pseudo code of it. Okay, while in architecture patterns, whenever you use this vocabulary architecture pattern, you just know block diagrams. You have no idea how the source code can come up. So like, for example, if you say MVC, then in MVC you have a model, you have a view, and you have a controller. But we have no idea that controller, how it is coded, right? We have no idea that view, it can be anything else, right? So in architecture pattern, we just know the block diagrams, but we do not know how the implementation is, and that depends from technology to technology. For example, if you are from Java, then the way you do MVC would be different than the way you do it in Microsoft, right? And then we have finally the architecture style, where we have, how do you say it? These are, I'll not say rules, but these are like definitions, or definitions, you can say, where this, like, for example, REST is architectural style which says follow HTTP. So you can say, rather than definition, let me put a right word here, these are just principles. They are one-liner principles, and here we even don't have a block diagram. We just have one line saying, okay, REST is the architectural style which follows HTTP, and we have to follow GET, POST, and so on, right? Then we can say, okay, service-oriented is architecture style, where we talk in terms of XML. Okay, so remember that whenever you are using these three terminologies, please be very careful in what you are using, because sometimes I've seen people saying like factory pattern is the architecture pattern, so they just casually say it, but then when some senior or some other person who is at the other end, there can be confusion, right? Okay, let me just check if people are able to hear me. I'm not sure. Gaurav, are you able to hear me? I'm not sure.
Yes. Actually, I am entertaining the question if anyone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if anyone has queries, please go and start putting out here. Okay, so there are some questions. Definitely, I'll come to those questions. Okay, so these are some, and the final, especially in India, because I'm from that region, so I know very well how people work here. So here, like, if you know 20 design pattern, that means you are an architect. That's kind of like very funny, right? Design pattern should be natural. It should come out naturally. If somebody is saying, okay, like, this is my problem, then it should just come out naturally. The factory pattern just naturally comes in your head, and you naturally start coding it, and seamlessly that pattern becomes a part of your code. If you see a design pattern which is fixed abnormally, you will come to know that you will not like that code. For example, a lot of times I see like some of the code, I'm jumping from one layer to other layer to other layer, and I have no idea why we have 10 layers, right? So this is a very important part, that design pattern should be a part of your culture, should be natural rather than artificial. So it's not like you read 3-4 definitions of gang of four, and then you just try to stick to that definition, and you just become too sticky to it, then it's not going to work out. So you should be democratic, you should think freely, it should be natural. Like, you shouldn't be saying like, okay, look, I'm going to put factory pattern. Just put factory pattern, and the team should enjoy it, right? So these are some of the points I put ahead, whatever in my experience I have gathered, about design patterns. I've just put them here. Now let us go back here and let us talk about the first design pattern, which I feel that whenever I start a project, I end up with this design pattern: aggregate root. Okay. Anyone here who has heard about this aggregate root pattern? Anyone? Just to the class, I'm putting the question. Anyone who has heard about aggregate root? Okay, guys. So here it is. Now, okay, I can see no, a lot of no. But believe me, once I show you the source code, you will say yes, I have used aggregate root. Okay, so you don't have to worry about it. It's just, I think one of the things of design pattern which I find is that most of these patterns have come from US and UK, where English is the first language. At least I think like that. And when they use those big words like aggregate root, then sometimes you think, my God, what is it, right? If they say repository pattern, you just get so if I'm from a vernacular medium, so I'm not really from English medium. So sometimes when I hear those big words, I have to really make a dictionary search. But when I make a dictionary search, I come to know, oh, that's what it is, right? So this name looks very big, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just type here aggregate root, and let us see what I get on the net, and let us try to understand that. As I've said, I don't have any PowerPoint presentations and so on. And also one point which I would like to make out here: whenever you are learning design patterns, or architecture, right? Remember that architecture is very subjective. It is absolutely subjective. So when you say, okay, aggregate root must be, this person must have done differently, that person must have done differently, that person must have done differently, and they are all okay from their project nature perspective, from their project people perspective, and from their tools perspective, from their language perspective. So one of the things what I do is that I try to get 2-3 definitions from different sources before coming to a conclusion. So one of the tough part about architecture is that we don't have a central body which says that, okay, this is the definition of aggregate root. So you need to really hunt around 2-3 websites and then say, okay, this looks to be the nearest one. Okay. So I've come across here to Martin Flower site. I'm a Fowler site, okay, again, some of the important points here. Whenever you are learning this architecture and patterns and so on, let me make 2 distinctions out here, as you learn, it's important. One is the person who has created the design pattern or identified the design pattern. So gang of 4 people have identified the design pattern. And then one of them are authors like me or Martin or someone else, who write about design patterns. You have to be very clear among them that one of them is the author, the other one has really found that design pattern. So both of them are different. For example, Microsoft has made .NET. I'm just the author of .NET. I just write a lot of things around .NET. But I don't become an authority of .NET to talk anything, right? So I think these 2 things should be clear when you read any definition. So here is the aggregate root definition. And let me know what you can understand from it. So I'm going to go and just copy this small note out here rather than the whole thing, and I'll put it here. So it says that, there's the definition around here. It says that aggregate will have only one component object as a root, and any references from outside the aggregate should only go to the aggregate root, and the root can thus ensure integrity of the aggregate as a whole. So anyone here who can make out from this what is written? So let me know if what you can make out from that. Yeah, aggregate root. Okay, so that's the aggregate root. These are all design patterns, yes. So just guys, I don't know how to put both of them. So here it is. So what can you understand? Again, one of the things very important is that you have to read and then you have to implement in C#. That is very important. So normally these design pattern guys, they just say on the air that, okay, this is what it is. But at the end of the day, when you say you want to implement in C#, you should know what to do, right? So can anyone tell me what, I can see that some of the answers out there. Main method. No, main method is not aggregate root. Yes. I can see answer from Kirtul. Char will be aggregate root. I did not get what is char. Okay. Anyone here what you can make out from this small definition out here? One main and G equal to functionality. It is just an interface. See, remember, like, design pattern is not object-oriented programming. Huh? So yes, object-oriented programming is base, but okay, so let me explain you. And when I explain you the code, you will say, oh, that was aggregate load. So let me go and create a simple project here. Let me create a console application just for simplicity purpose. So here I have opened Visual Studio 2015. I have created a console application. Slow. I'm sorry. Boom here. So now what happens is, now look at this. I have a class customer. One customer has multiple, let's say, addresses. So class address. So I'll say inside this customer, I will have list of address. One-to-many relationship, right? So you can see that I'm saying here addresses, new list of address, right? I have one customer, and one customer has multiple addresses, and in this address, let's say that this address has a type, which says that, okay, this is a phone, a landline, this is a home address, or this is an office address, right? So I've kept a type here in type, and I will say that the street name or something, right? Now, so if somebody is consuming this component, he will consume it like this. He will say, okay, I'll create an object of customer, x is equal to new customer, right? And I will say x dot, and then I can start adding addresses. Now to add addresses inside the customer, I have to make this as public. So I'll say here, okay, so let me add one address here. So x dot addresses dot add is equal to new address, and let's say I add a type, which is, let's say one is a home address, right, and some name to it if I want, and then I can keep adding a lot of address to it like this. So I can have street name, absolutely, street name, whatever, like Pune, whatever, right? So that it is. So one-to-many relationship, a kind of a composed relationship, right, and all that. Now let us say I say you, okay, let me put a validation. I want to put a validation saying that you can have only one type of address of one type. Means, for example, if I add a home address, then I cannot add a home address again, right? Now you can see here what has happened is this whole thing is public. So if the whole thing is public, I can keep on adding. This is a naked list address. It's a naked one, no protection, nothing, right? So I can always go and say, okay, add one more address, and it will never complain. It will say, okay, go ahead and add one more type 1. So I want that, when this type 1 is added, I want that it should throw up exception. It should throw up exception. Let me go back to that definition. It should ensure the integrity of the aggregate as a whole. So as a whole, I want that one customer can have only one type of home address or office address. So what you do, you will make this as private, first thing. Right? You will expose out a method. You will say, okay, let me create a public method. I'll say void add address. Right? In this, you will go and you will write a for loop, and before adding it to the collection, you will check. So you will say here, where x in underscore addresses, you will say that, okay, if this address has been added, so if this type has been added already into the collection, then do not try to add it and throw an exception saying type cannot be duplicate. And if everything is okay, everything is good, then I will just go and say, okay, now add underscore addresses dot add that address. So what I've really done is I have made this as private, and I have put a logic around, before even this gets added to the collection, I have put a logic around it. Okay. Now with this, so in short, now nobody can go to the addresses directly like this. Nobody can go to the naked list. I don't know how to use that word, naked list. It has to go through a logic, it has to go through a business logic now. So in short, now I will be saying here, okay, x dot add new address. Right, so here I'll say, okay, type can be 1, So if I now try to add with the type 1 again, it will throw me exception saying that you cannot add. So if you see here, if I try to do this, if I try to run this now, so it will throw me an exception saying that type can be only one, right? So it should end up somewhere in exception down, saying that you can see here there's an exception saying you cannot add multiple type of same address. So this is termed as an aggregate route. Now look at this. So we have the customer, and all the manipulation of the address is happening via the customer route. Nobody can go and get the address collection direct reference. Nobody can have a direct reference of the underscore addresses into the UI. So if you go and see here, it says that any so the route, any references from outside should go only through the aggregate route. So you can see here, I can just put this thing over here. So you can see now, here it is. So any references from outside aggregate should only go to the aggregate route, that is to the customer, and not directly to addresses. So this is termed as an aggregate route. An aggregate route, some of the points I want to talk about aggregate route here. Aggregate route looks very attractive at the start, frankly, and it is attractive. But you know, it is also very complicated. It's also highly complicated to be implemented in project, because in project, think about that if you have a deep root structure like, you know, customer, and then you have addresses inside it, and every address has a phone. If you have such kind of a deep root hierarchy, then your main object can get overloaded with a lot of logic. So you have to be careful in using it. So if you think that the whole thing should act like a root, you know, whole thing should be one logical unit, for example, order and order items, and every order has taxes. So you would like to say that, okay, order is a root, order items should never be accessible outside, and everything should go through order, then go ahead and use aggregate root. So if you're using aggregate root, well be aware that you are getting into high complication, but you are getting into high integrity as well, because now your component will act like one unit. Okay, so if I put in simple words, aggregate root is nothing but, I'm putting now in simple words, I cannot follow Martin Flower. Aggregate root is nothing but in a one-to-many relationship, right? In a one-to-many relationship, or in an aggregation relationship, the contained objects, contained means the child objects. When I say child, it means not parent child. Contained objects are referenced, are manipulated via the root, not directly, right? So that was a very simple explanation of aggregate root. Let me go back to questions here. Yeah. Okay. So guys, any questions on aggregate root? I'm not sure if you're able to follow that. I can see. Yeah. This.
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
absolutely.
there are a few questions on this.
Yes. Yeah. Let me take up the questions. Okay. So Sankasi, we would reconnect. Aggregate is something like collection. Yes, but it is not just a collection. Like we always have a one-to-many collection, Shweta ma'am. But you know, the second important part is it has to go through a central route. Okay, it has to go via the route. So everything cannot be public out there. Yes, yeah, exactly. So yeah, what you said is right. So car is the aggregate route. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, but not just one-to-many relationship, but also like those relationship gets manipulated via the route. Okay, let me see what other questions. Okay. Okay, I have one doubt. You know, architectural pattern should be implemented as they meant for. But for example, in aggregate, you throw an exception, then how you are following aggregator pattern should be implemented as they are meant for. No, see, I'm throwing an exception, and the exception will be caught by the client, right? So the client will put a try catch, and he will just get the exception. So if it is web application, he will show the exception in a different way. In JavaScript must be. If he is a Windows application, he will show it in a message box. So I really don't. The exception handling has nothing to do with the aggregate root pattern as such. That's perfect. This code is a perfect aggregate root, not an issue. Any real world example of aggregated pattern? Not a, yeah. So yeah. So one of the examples Sunil I just showed is like customer addresses. The another example which I find always is order and order items. So one order has order items, and whenever you add an order item, you want to validate everything. every order item has taxes, so you want to calculate the taxes, right? So in those scenarios, I've seen that aggregate root is there. Aggregate root is everywhere where you want to treat one to many as a single logical unit. Yes, that's right, people. What you said is right. What you said, people, is exactly right. You know, it is different from a rule engine. Yeah, that's a rule engine is different. What Vipul said is right. You know, it enforces rule to ensure that the whole entire aggregate root is valid, or must be look at the definition of Martin Flower, which I like it, or is to ensure the integrity of the aggregate as a whole. Okay. Good. So that was the first pattern. Now I want to hear from you guys. How many of you guys have used aggregate root? Tell me. I want to just know from you guys, knowingly, unknowingly, how many of you guys have already used aggregate root and today, like, you know, because I've been using it. Like, I normally, when I work in a project, we all have one-to-many relationship, right? Yeah. So you can see, like, design pattern is easy. Once you understand it, it is very easy. Okay. So now let's go ahead with the next pattern. Yeah, everybody, if he has worked for even 1 year, you cannot have a project without an aggregate root, 100%. Yes. So Kritul has made a very important point, and I think I did say, like, manipulating the contained object is difficult as we have to load the whole object. That is right. You know, manipulating the objects are difficult because now the complete logic is loaded on the root. So definitely the object becomes very complex. But I think, you know, it has a, but then, you know, you have to then respect the integrity, right? So if you want integrity, then you will end up writing all the logic on the root. Okay. Let us go ahead with the next pattern. The next pattern is very much connected again back to aggregate root. Actually, if you use aggregate root, then you use iterator pattern, right? Iterator pattern is again like a byproduct of aggregate root. Okay. Iterator pattern normally, let me, in the notes, let me see if I put down aggregate root. Yes, you know. Also, like, let me put down one more point here in the notes. Aggregate root is complicated, so beware of your root logic becoming complex. So, right. So you have to balance between integrity and do you want your root or root logic to be complex. Okay. Iterator pattern. Now, iterator pattern, whenever I talk with my friends, you know, they will say iterator pattern means for each loop. I don't know, like, that's for each. They don't even go ahead. If you ask them in interviews what is iterator pattern, sir, for each. That's it, you know. So let me tell you what is iterator pattern, and also let me put down a point here. Iterator pattern, if you have an aggregate root, you will have a iterator pattern. It's again like a very connected thing. Okay. Let me explain. So here is an aggregate root, right? Now what I've done in this aggregate root is I made things as private. So that means that I cannot go and browse this collection. But definitely, like every end user or every UI, when you add something, you would like to do a for each loop and you would like to read it, isn't it? But now here is a dilemma. If I make this as public, I no more remain aggregate root. If I make this as private, I cannot no more read the list. So I should have some mechanism, you know, by which I can just read this list and not manipulate it. Any manipulation that happens has to happen via the add method, right? So how can we do it? Yes, everyone here. Look at it. Like, I want to go and iterate through this collection, right? But I also want to ensure that my aggregate root logic is maintained. So if I make this public, I no more become my aggregate root. If I keep it private, I cannot read it. How should I do it? Answers out there. I'm not sure if people are able to understand. Okay, can we hide things in aggregate root using an abstract class collection for each? Okay, so can we hide that aggregate root inside for each and just make it? But how do you hide it? How can you hide the manipulative methods? Don't say me read only. Huh? A lot of people can say, okay, sir, make it read only kind of thing. but read-only kind of thing will not work actually. Okay, that's a good thing what Baisakhi has said. We need to introduce a collection indexer public and must be we need to give a lookup to that index and make things out there, and all that, right? So quickly, first thing in .NET, we already have something called as IEnumerable and IEnumerator. Okay, this IEnumerable and IEnumerator are nothing but their implementation of iterator pattern. I'm sorry. Remember, all gang of 4 patterns, at least not all, I will say that's a very wrong word to use, but 80% gang of 4 patterns which were introduced in the old times of 90s, the new frameworks like Java and C# have almost implemented each one of them. Okay, for example, iterator pattern. In Java, there is something called as an iterator. They have directly given the name iterator, saying that this is iterator pattern. While in Microsoft, we have something called as IEnumerable and IEnumerator. So what I can do is, I can do something like this. I can expose out a method here, and I will say this is IEnumerable. Okay, and I will say, okay, give out list of address. So I'll say get address. So not use the old style of C++, please do not use indexes. If you're using indexer, then you are not using the power of .NET. Okay, so here I will say now return underscore addresses, and I will make it as return address. So I can do this. Now what I can do is, so now you can see here, if I want to browse the address, I can say x dot get address, and you can see when I do a dot, I don't find any manipulative methods like add or insert or so on. I don't find any one of those methods. I just get iteration, right? So now if anybody wants to iterate, he can just use a for each loop and he can iterate. And if anybody wants to manipulate, we have that strong rules, which we have written, and it will go through the filter of that rules, right? So if you want to use and implement an iterator pattern, you can just go and expose as IEnumerable. I would also suggest you, and I will leave it to the class to tell me that why I've done this. Don't just return addresses, but return a to list. Don't just return addresses, but return a to list of it. I will not tell you the answer why I've made it to list. I will want you guys to figure it out. So now I can go and do a for each here, for each where t in get address, right? And this x dot get address helps me to loop, but it does not expose those manipulative methods. So if you go and read iterator pattern definition online, so let me just go ahead here to the definitions. Iterator pattern. Always remember, guys, you try to read the definition from 2-3 sources, so that let me take up Do Factory because they have like one-liners out there. So you can see here very quickly, it provides a way to access the element of an object in an aggregate root condition. If you don't have an aggregate object, if you don't have an aggregate root, then there is no iterator pattern. And without exposing, look at those words. Those words are like, you have to see that how it is mapping to the code. Without exposing its underlying representation, means without exposing those manipulative methods, you can just do a for each. Okay. So remember that iterator pattern cannot exist without aggregate root. Okay. So quickly, I can say here, iterator pattern helps you to loop through a collection. I've used the word loop through a collection, in a aggregate root condition, right? So guys, any questions out here on what is an aggregate root on this one? Okay. Yes, absolutely. It would clear you and not the original object. That's what I've used the to list for. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah. See, the client can. Yeah, you can use the I, but if you use the iList, iList has those add and those methods. And also, like guys, very quickly, if you're doing .NET, right, then in .NET we have IEnumerable and IEnumerator. So you can have, how do you say it? stateful iteration and non-stateful iteration. So again, the patterns can become complex here, but like you can have, if you use I enumerable, it becomes a stateless iteration. If you use I enumerator, uh, then it becomes a stateful iteration. Yeah. Right. So that was the second pattern, iterator pattern. Any questions, guys, on iterator pattern? So look at this and look at how it is going on. Like, this is called as natural use of design patterns. Nobody told me that I have to use an aggregate root. My situation forced me to use it, right? Nobody said me that I have to use the iterator pattern. My situation automatically told me that you have to use the iterator pattern here, or else your objects are not valid. So design pattern should be natural. It should just come out naturally, fluently. Like tomorrow when somebody debugs your application, he should not feel that you have used just jargons, but you actually implemented patterns. Okay, stateful iterations and stateless iteration, Kritul here means like, if you look at, okay, I enumerable versus I enumerator, that's what is stateful iterations versus stateful, So must be Kritul, you can send me a mail, because there is a very long, that one word of stateful and stateless has a lot of things in it. Just send me a mail. You can send a mail to Indiamentor. We can, yes, that's right. What Shweta ma'am is saying is right. Okay, so let's go to the next pattern. I don't know if I will be able to complete all of them today. Adapter pattern. Again, this pattern is very, very normal, very, very natural. I have been using it. I'm sure that everyone must be using it. So guys, how many of you guys have used iterator pattern? I just want to know. Actually, most of the people have understood iterator pattern, but I don't know, like how many of you have used it rightly? I don't know. Like people know that this is iterator pattern, but so how many of you guys have used iterator pattern? Yeah. Again, I'm saying for each is not iterator pattern, guys. So if you're doing a for each everywhere in your UI or anywhere, it is not an iterator pattern. It should be safely iterating it without manipulating, going through an aggregate route. Okay. Okay, so that's good to see. Adapter pattern. Okay, adapter pattern again. Let's see the definition of adapter pattern and let us see if a lot of people can understand it. Adapter pattern. So you can see like design patterns is easy, right? Just that it should be natural. Okay. So I'm going to do factory again and again because they have those one-liners. Okay. They have those one-liners. I don't agree to this frequency of use here, but it's probably because the projects which I work do not match with them. But the definitions are okay. So can anyone tell me what can you understand from this definition? Here is the adapter pattern definition, guys. I will go to the chat room here and let us see that if people can figure out from the definition. Okay. So yes, John, I will repeat that again. Iterator pattern. I've also put down the notes, John sir, on the document. That is the definition of adapter pattern. Can anyone make out from that what does it mean? Remember I told you, right? It's just the English word is complex, not the concept. Once I show you the code, you will find that this is the most easiest thing that is there, right? Yeah, simple, adapting to things, yes. But what kind of scenarios? To interact with two layers and yeah. But we always interact between two layers. Yeah, but I don't have, I'll not say the capability, Shweta ma'am, but I will say the compatibility. So I can see lots of, okay, so let me show you a simple example here. Now, so I'm going to go and comment this code out, if somebody wants to see it later on, right? Now think about it that in your application, you have a lot of reporting components, or I'll say, let us say you have an export utility. So you have a lot of reporting pages, and in every of the report page you have an export utility. Guys, what we will do now today, I think it's almost 10 here. Okay, so must be I will take I don't want to disturb everyone here. I'll take this one. I will leave the simple factory and take one more. Between these two we'll make a choice, guys, because I don't want to extend this session. Everybody has come planned here, so let us see how it can. I can see the timing out there. Adapter pattern. Okay, I'm coming to adapter pattern again. Okay. Just want to make sure that people who have planned I don't want to waste everyone's time just by extending it. Adapter pattern. Now, let us say you have an export utility, and you have different types of exports: export to PDF, export to Word, export to a lot of things, right? So what do you think is that, okay, this thing is going to get consumed in a lot of places. So you create an interface saying I export, like this, and you create an interface and you say to all of your developers, okay, like whenever you create an export functionality, like let's say export to PDF, you should always implement this interface. So you will say your public class, I will say this is Word export. Okay, so if you are having a Word export, please implement I export, and then I export and implement this interface, write your code here. Some other developer you will ask for saying, okay, please go ahead and do, let's say, Excel export. Fine. So Excel export, he will also use I export, right? So you have a uniformity within your project. Within your project, each of your developer is having the same method name: save, save, and save. It is very much uniform. So you go to any UI, for you it is very easy. You will say I export E is equal to new Word export. So here also it is E dot save. Very nice. You can also say E is equal to new Excel export. Here also it is E dot save. So basically you have a lot of uniformity within your project because you have control on your project. You have told your developers to work like that, right? Now let us say you want to do a PDF export. Now this PDF export component you got from a third party, and that third party says, I don't have a method save, I have a method export. So let us say you have a third party DLL which you are using in your project, like this: public class PDF export, right? Now he does not import, he does not implement your I export. Neither you can change his code. When you get a DLL, you cannot manipulate the code, right? So now you get a method here saying public void export. Confusing here because now you have to say, okay, if it is not third party, it is e.save. If it is third party, it is export. Right? Now suddenly things are incompatible. Let me go back to the definition. Suddenly things are incompatible. Everywhere you had put a uniformity saying save, 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 and suddenly this third party DLL is having export. And now think about, whenever this reporting things are created, you have like 100, 200 reports. Everywhere you call export, 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 and now suddenly you have to call something else, right? So in that kind of scenario, you want to ensure that this matches with this naming convention, right? So what you can do is, you will go out here, you will create an adapter. What happens in our normal life, if let us say you have a socket and adapter which is not matching, or plug which is not matching, you put adapter in between, right? So you'll actually go and say, okay, here is a PDF adapter, and you will say I export, and in this you will go and you will create the object of PDF export, and here you will say x.export. So now what will happen is, this is the adapter. So what you will do is you will now call here the adapter and not the direct class. So you'll say here, okay, here is a PDF adapter, and it's again e.save. So you can see now the PDF interface which was not compatible, because of this adapter, it is now compatible. So adapter pattern, as the name says, it lets classes work together that could not have worked because of incompatible interface. Very simple pattern, but every time, when you see there is a third party thing, it is not following your naming convention, you try to put a wrapper. Normally this wrapper thing, this word wrapper, is a synonym for adapter. I have seen that in projects, whenever I'm working, whenever I hear that word wrapper, I feel like it is nothing but adapter. Okay. Guys, any questions here on what is an adapter pattern? Let me go back there. Let me go back. Yeah, wrap. Okay, I agree. Okay, I agree. Preet Kaur, that wrapper and adapter are entirely different. Wrapper, sometimes it is not about making interfaces compatible. Agreed. I just flew with my words actually, but a lot of times I've seen that wrapper is there. Yeah, I agree absolutely. But I'm just saying that a lot of times we just wrap things around, and Yes, wrapper and adapter are different, but by using the wrapper what do you call it? By using the wrapper technique, we implement adapter. I can say that. Every time when we call the save of the export, yes, a new object of PDF will be created. Yes, absolutely. Yes, we can go and Johnson, we can go and improvise that code. Absolutely, we can improvise that code. You can create it at the member level, right? And again, like in this adapter pattern also, there are two flavors. I will not go into that, but still let me talk about it. This is the object adapter pattern, right? Sometimes you can use the inheritance adapter pattern or class adapter pattern. What you can do is you can do something like this. You can say PDF export, and you can say this dot export. Now this is the class adapter pattern. Class adapter pattern, what I've seen is it is not possible in all scenarios to use class adapter pattern. For example, let us say you are making a web services compatible with you. Now you cannot inherit from a web service. You cannot inherit from Java components. You cannot inherit from COM, right? So, a class adapter pattern is only possible in the same technology. If you want to go cross technology, or if you are making a proxy call, then you normally end up with object adapter pattern. But there are two flavors of it. One is a class adapter pattern, which goes via inheritance, and one is the object adapter pattern, which goes via object creation. Okay. Okay, so object adapter, shouldn't the PDF export class be an abstract class? No, the PDF export class cannot be an abstract class, because we have to create the object of that class, because I need to create the object, or else I won't be able to make a call, right? This PDF adapter, I have to create an object. If I create an abstract class, then I cannot create an object of it. Okay. PDF export. No, see, PDF export is not in my control. This PDF export is coming from a third party, so I don't know how the third party has done it. So this is like from third party. Think about like PDF export is a DLL, which I don't have control. If I have control over it, I can just go and make it as save, isn't it? Like, so I don't have control on that. So that's a limitation. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, guys. Now I would like to get from you guys, like because we have 5 minutes, and let us respect time. I think I took a lot of patterns out here. Let me rather than taking simple factory pattern, let me take template pattern, because simple factory pattern is too big. Okay, so I'm dropping one pattern. I'm sorry for that, because I would be extending this class a lot, so that we can discuss at least, if let us say if we take only 4 patterns, we discuss around the 4 patterns rather than taking 10 patterns, right? Template pattern. Let us see what is template pattern. Again, a very, very useful pattern. And I remember my good old days of ADO.NET in 2003, 2004. Every data access layer I made in ADO.NET, I used template pattern. I think 2003, 2004, those times of page lifecycle, ADO.NET, like it was like template pattern all over in Microsoft, right? So let's look at this template pattern. So again, let me go to do factory, just its one line definition. So what can you understand from this definition? Again, as I say, only the definition looks complex. Once I show you the code, it's very simple. Yeah, so that's a template pattern. It defines a skeleton and this and this. What can you understand from it? Abstract and interfaces are object-oriented programming concepts. Abstract and interfaces are object-oriented programming concept. Here, design pattern is like some kind of a solution which takes interfaces, which takes classes, which takes things together and gives you a solution. So design patterns are not object-oriented programming principles, right? So what can you understand from this small paragraph here? I can see that some of those that answer. Define flow of steps. That's good one. when we have repetitive statements, we combine them in order as algorithms. Okay. So guys, first thing, don't get confused with algorithm as logic, huh? Like don't get confused with like sorting and those are different ones. So you know, has steps, we expose the steps. Absolutely. So Kritul has said it right, and that clients can implement it. Not clients, but okay. Like SQL connection, CMD command, open. Yeah, absolutely right, Sally. So I can see like a lot of people have used adapter pattern. Uh, I saw one answer which was right. Define flow of steps. Uh, okay, so I can see a lot of people are answering there, and almost everyone is answering right. And this Salish sir has said a very that ADO.NET thing, right? I can see on the chat. So let us talk about it. Now, look at this. So okay, so so I'm going to go and put a comment here, and also this is done. Now, in a template pattern, a lot of times what happens, you know, the sequence of the steps are same. For example, we say, okay, open the connection, execute the command, and close the connection. Always the open connection will happen first. The close connection will happen at the last. Execute command will happen at in between. For example, ETL like extraction, transformation, and loading. These three step sequence are same. Like first you will say extract, then you will say transform, then you will say load. Look at your ASP.NET page lifecycle. First there will be init, then there will be load, then will be render and pre-render. You know, so there is a sequence which is fixed, and nobody can change it. But I can go and override those individual things. I can go and override saying, okay, how the command can execute. So here, what it says is, it says that there is a parent class which defines these steps, and nobody can change the steps. But you can go and override certain logic of that steps. Okay, so for example, let us say extraction, transformation, and loading. Or let us say ADO.NET. Let us talk about ADO.NET, right? So in ADO.NET, we'll do something like this. So public class data layer. So I'll say, okay, now this is an excellent place, you know, where we can make it an abstract class, because in abstract class, we have half defined things, right? So we say, okay, the sequence is defined, but how individual sequence will work, that is not defined. So this is an excellent thing to have an abstract class. So I'll say here, okay, public void, public abstract, I'll say, okay, void, first open the connection. Second, I will say close the connection. Third, I will say execute the connection, right? Now, I can have a method here called as public void process, right? In this process, what I will do is I will say, okay, I will always open first, then I will execute, and then I will close the connection. Now, defines the skeleton of the operation. So this one here defines that the skeleton of the operation. Now what I can do is I can say, okay, how this execute command will work will be defined by the child class. So the child class will say, okay, public class, and I will say here, let us say this is customer data layer, right? So customer data layer will have its own way of mapping. I will implement this data layer here, and I will say here override execute. So in this execute, I will go and write the logic of mapping customer data, right? In the same way, so over here, actually open connection and close connection you can define at the top if you wish, right? So but still, in case you want to go and define open connection, you can define the open connection, close connection. So you can go and you can override the individual steps. So subclasses define certain steps of algorithm. So the subclasses can define certain steps of the algorithm, but without changing the algorithm structure. So without changing this guy, changed, getting it? So template pattern is where, you know, there is some fixed sequence of steps. You can override those individual individual steps, but you cannot override the sequence. So some excellent examples are ADO.NET, when you want to create a general data layer, like things like ETL. I have also seen things like you know, XML parsing that I saw. You know, XML parsing, it says, okay, this node comes, this node comes, this node comes, but it is possible that some nodes can be different. Okay, So template pattern. Again, let me go back to the notes here. So I have said iterator, template, fixed, but individual steps can be overridden in the child classes. Right. So guys, any questions here on template pattern? Right, so let me revise, guys, what we have done in this class. Just a small revision. We said these are the notes. I will put Gaurav, I will put these notes in a proper format on Indiamentor. Must be I can write down some kind of a small note around that factory thing which I was not able to complete here. But I said that time-tested solutions for architecture. Do not think that Gang of 4 patterns are the only patterns which are existing. There are a lot of other patterns which have come from Evans, which have come from other people, CQRS and so on. Try to understand the difference between design pattern, architecture style. Please use these vocabularies in a very, very choosy way, proper way. Design pattern should be natural. It should become a part of your culture and not a show off. You should not be showing off saying that look at this, I made a factory pattern, right? So do not show off things, make it natural, make it nice. Aggregate root. So we said in aggregate root is nothing but in a one-to-many relationship, on aggregation relationship, the contained objects are referenced via the root, and that maintains the integrity of the object. Okay. Aggregate root also brings in a lot of complications, so do be aware of your root logic becoming complex. If you have an aggregate root, you will have an iterator pattern, and an iterator pattern in .NET can be implemented by using IEnumerable and IEnumerator. Template pattern is nothing but it is fixed sequence, but individual steps can be overridden. And also we talked about adapter pattern. Adapter pattern helps to make I'll not say third party, but make incompatible interfaces compatible. So incompatible third party interfaces compatible. So guys, any questions here? Just went through simple like 4 or 5 patterns, but this must have given you idea that what is design pattern. Okay, at least like how you should think, how you should go about reading it, how you should go about implementing it. Workflows can also implement. Okay, for workflow I will not say you should implement this pattern. For workflow, look into chain of responsibilities, COR. Chain of responsibilities. You can have a look at chain of responsibility. Again, guys, do not be too sticky that okay, now I have to use design pattern somehow in my project, and so what should I use? Do not try to push yourself too hard. If you want to do workflow and if you think you are cool with Windows workflow, use it, right? Don't think about patterns. The pattern thing should come out naturally. Okay. Yeah, chain of responsibilities. Are patterns language agnostic? Okay, it's a very good question here. Let me answer this. Is architecture language agnostic? Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. What I can do with JavaScript, I cannot do with .NET. What I can do in .NET, I cannot do in JavaScript, right? So the patterns definitely depend on the language. If let's say if my language does not give me IEnumerable, how do you expect me to implement iterator pattern? Things would be very different, right? Okay. If my language does not give me a proxy creation methodology, how will I implement proxy pattern, right? So yes, it is definitely the language agnostic. I know that in companies I've seen, I'm a solution architect, I will only do solutioning. So my solution will be working in Java and .NET. I don't know how it's going to work out, guys. It is very technical specific. So if you are a Microsoft architect, that means that you are aware of .NET, you are aware of Angular, you are aware of IIS, you are aware of SQL Server. You are not a person who can architect for Java. If you are a Java person, you are aware of Apache, you are aware of the tool sets. So you are very specific to Java. It is not possible you can create just a general solution and say that I'm an architect. So no, that's not possible. Okay. Shiva, I wanted to know which patterns we can use for managing business logic. I see many logical patterns around here. So let me talk about some patterns. Again, like as I've said, Abhishek, do not push yourself too much, saying that what patterns can we do. Write your business logic properly. But for business logic, I've seen that a decorator pattern is very good. Like In business logic, if you see, you have some validation, and then you want to put some more validation on the top of it. You want to decorate something on it, and then remove the decoration, right? So I've found that decorator pattern is good for business logic. Okay. So thank you guys. I know I can see that there are 46 participants, and I'm so happy about it. You are there here for 1 hour. I have missed one pattern, but I promise that I will cover that pattern either in writing on Indiamentor or on some websites of child of Indiamentor. Right. So thank you very much. And notes I will publish on Indiamentor site. Yes.